what I really mean by this is make a little progress every single day. Like, don't try and go all out and burn out, because that's what causes burnout. All right, so I go on LinkedIn a lot. One, for my job, it's important for me to research, and then two, I just think it's kind of interesting to see what people post. And one thing that I notice everyone talks about is winning the day. And for me, I read that and I say, what the hell does that mean, to win the day? Because you can't quantify that. You can't calculate what a win of the day is. People will post their morning routines. There's people who get super descriptive about it. They'll say, okay, I wake up at 3 and then I jump in the cold plunge and then I go to the gym and then I have breakfast with my kids and then I take them to school. Anyways, there's people who say all this kind of stuff on LinkedIn or anywhere, really. You can find it anywhere. Social media, just your mom might say something. And it's hard to say what winning the day is, because I think it looks different for everyone. And so people have asked me before, why do I wake up so early? Why do I have such structure to my day? And I think it's just because that's how I win the day personally. Is I have certain things that I need to do every single day in order to feel like I had a productive and efficient, good day, right? And do I have a schedule? Not necessarily. I don't have like, I need to be up at, well, I wake up at 4:30, but I don't have like a set thing that I need to do every single day, right? I'm not sending emails at 6 a.m. I'm not sitting down making cold calls at 11. I don't have like structure in that sense, right? But I was thinking about this, like what do I consider a win for the day? And I think it's going to be determined based on whoever you are, right? It's going to change based on what goals you have for yourself. If you have a family, so keep that in mind. But I came across this quote from Ryan Holiday. He's I've talked about him before on this podcast, but he studies like the Stoic philosopher guys. So anyone from like Socrates to Marcus Aurelius, anyone like that. Really smart dude. I really like this guy, but he has this quote, and I think it's just a really good framework for setting up your day for success. And it just, the entire episode of this podcast is going to be based on this quote. I'll say it, and then I'll dive deeper into each of the points of it. But here it is. He says, wake up early, limit interruptions, make a little progress every day, say no a lot, learn from your mistakes, pick yourself back up when you slip, waste no time measuring yourself against other people. And that's it. For me, that's like a successful day right there. Is if you can do all those things and you could say, yeah, I give it my best shot, then by all means, you have a successful day, right? So I want to start with waking up early. This is something that I've been doing for, since like 2017, 2016. I decided to go on the Jocko train, full Jocko, go full 4:30 in the morning, baby. Haven't stopped since. And the reason I do that is because I feel like I can get a lot done before going to work. It's a time where I can spend focusing on myself. So doing things like exercising, things I know that I don't do after work. Because for myself, if I don't work out in the morning, there's probably a 85% chance I'm going to do it in the afternoon. I'll get home, I'll be tired. I'm not going to want to do it. Won't have motivation. I'll have to hit like 3 scoops of pre-workout, and so my heart will hate me, and it's not a good thing. So for me, I know myself, and I work out better in the morning. So I have to wake up early if I want to accomplish that. And the other thing too is when you wake up early, that's your first win. Because if you can beat the alarm clock, then you're beating most of America. Most people hit snooze, and most people have a goal to, not hit snooze. So if you're able to get up past your alarm clock and just go, then you're going to beat most people. And Jocko has this quote where he's just like, people ask him all the time, like, you're so consistent in getting up at 4:30. How do you do it? He says when his alarm clock goes off, he just stands up. And it sounds simple, but really, if you just decide the night before, as soon as that thing goes off, I'm just going to stand up, then, hey, guess what? You're already awake. Why go back to bed? And sometimes the sheets will call you, especially on those cold winter days when it's dark outside. And in Utah, it's getting cold. It's starting to suck, but by all means, I'm not going to let that stop me, right? Because I know the benefit of waking up early. So you can count that as your first one of the day. Build some confidence, build some evidence that you are able to do what you say you can. And if you say you're going to wake up early, then do it. Because otherwise, you're going to start beating yourself up and be like, man, should have woken up early today. I really wanted to, but I was just tired. The pillow was cradling my head, telling me to stay in bed a little longer. Or maybe the wifey was, cuddling up with you, saying, come on, don't leave. You don't have to go to the gym. But hey, if she loves you and supports you, she'll let you go. Anyway, so that's something that I think is important to realize is if you commit to waking up early, do it. Don't say you're going to do it and don't. But there's a few other things that I think are important to think about when waking up early. One, it's productivity, like I mentioned. You can get a lot done, right? It's good for your mental health. I don't think it's good to stay in bed all day. And I think there's studies that show that waking up early actually helps with depression and schizophrenia long term. So if you're schizophrenic, you might want to wake up early. Helps you sleep. If you wake up early, you're going to be able to go to bed earlier and get better sleep. For me personally, that doesn't really apply because my sleep sucks and I'm working on that. So thank you. But the biggest thing for me is like decision making. It allows you to like think about things prior to going to work. And a big chunk of that for me, at least, is going to the gym and exercising. That just lets me think about things I want to accomplish for the day. And then again, there's like my second win. So I wake up, I beat that alarm clock, shut up, don't hit snooze. And then boom, I'm in the gym, going hard. And then I feel a little bit more accomplished and I feel like I'm ready to take on whatever the day throws at me. So that's number one. That's my tips on waking up early. Second point, limiting interruptions. And this has been something incredibly difficult for me. I've always been someone who loves to distract themselves with things other than work. But I figured the best way to get the work done and to avoid that feeling of man, I have all these things I have to do is just to confront the work, like just start. And limited interruptions makes that a lot easier because if you're focused on TikTok, or if you're focused on just reading emails and you're delaying what you have to do to actually get things done, then you can consider that an interruption. I found this quote is kind of interesting, but research indicates that it takes an average of 23 minutes to recover your focus after an interruption. Knowing how to minimize interruptions can make a big difference to your productivity, combined with the other changes to your work habits. You can gain up to 2 extra hours of productive time each day. I don't know about that. That last part might be, give or take, but I think it's interesting. Like research indicates that it takes an average of 23 minutes to recover your focus after an interruption. So I have a hack for this. I have a sales job, and one thing I've always struggled with is cold calling. I'll distract myself to the max. Like I'll make a cold call, maybe I'll have a good one, and I'll spend some time like, hey, that was a good call. I'm gonna go watch a YouTube video for a quick second and get my mind off things. Or I'll open up Instagram, or I'll message my brother or my wife, or I don't know, doodle, draw something, grab a snack. But anyways, I'll just distract myself, right? When really I could get so much more done if I just sat down, confronted all the work, got it done, and then boom, good to go. So that's one thing I keep in mind is like, I know myself. I know I get distracted. So I bought this little kitchen timer. Anytime I go make cold calls, I bring this little timer in with me. And what's interesting is I heard someone say like, the timer thing was an idea from someone else, Alex Hormozy, if you know who that is. But he says anytime that you should set a timer for yourself, and anytime you get an interruption, whether that be a Slack message, a text, a call, pause it. Or you find yourself like on Instagram, pause it. And you will realize how much time or how many interruptions come through your day-to-day life just by doing that simple exercise. So you set a timer for yourself, your wife calls, pause the timer, and then restart once you get back to work. And then boom, you get hit by Slack, pause the timer. That way you can see like how often you are being interrupted. And that way it's like, okay, well, if I just need to make all these cold calls, I'm going to go on do not disturb and just get it done. Right. And so that's what I'll do is I'll go in for an hour. I'll set the timer and I go on do not disturb because I notice how many times I do press that button if I'm not. But I have to limit those interruptions because otherwise I'll distract myself with other things and forget about the work. So that's something else that's important. And then this is something I found this quote from Mozart of all people. He says the shorter way to do many things is only do one thing at a time. Simple as that. You can't spread yourself too thin. You can't try and multitask. I know we all like to think that we're really good at multitasking, but that's just a story we're trying to tell ourselves to, again, verify the distractions and the interruptions. So limit those, and I promise you'll be off better. And hopefully you will be able to get an extra 2 hours of your day, like that quote says. This one's important to me, and it's make a little progress every single day. And what I really mean by this is make a little progress every single day. Like don't try and go all out and burn out, because that's what causes burnout. Is if you have a goal for yourself and you put yourself all in for it for maybe a week, you're going to get burnt out. I always bring up the example of my brother. I love him to death. Blake, shout out to Blake. I love you, Blake. But Blake always has goals like fitness goals where he will just go balls to the wall for a week or 2 weeks, and then he'll just get tired and kind of fizzle out. And I've talked to him about this, and he's like, yeah, I know, I got this thing, I got this habit. And he knows that about himself, but he wants results quick, and yeah, it's fine. I mean, I love the guy, but if you want something to happen, you have to stay committed for a long period of time. That's one thing that I've learned. And so making a little progress every day is something that you have to be mindful of. This is a quote from Nick Bare that I love, which I've actually applied to a few assets in my life recently. And it's that which can be measured can be improved. And my example for that is I have a running log now. I've only been doing it for 2 weeks, but I can see progress within those like small tweaks that I'm making, or if I have a goal, and I've mentioned many times, like I'm trying to run a sub-3 marathon in February. With that, I have to be really fast, and it's tough to be that quick. You have to train hard. You have to really push yourself with speed. I need to be doing better, honestly, and that's why this tracking comes into place. But when I say small improvements, I mean small improvements. Like I think my average pace for 7 miles over the past 2 weeks has decreased, I guess, 3 seconds. So that's nothing. Like you put that side by side, it's like if you're on a track and someone would finish and then someone would be like right behind you. So in terms of like what that looks like, it doesn't look that fast, but it's just that small incremental progress. So that might be week 2, right? 3 seconds. Who knows? Maybe in month 2, I'll be down a minute. And that would be huge progress. But it's because I'm measuring it every single day. And it's because I'm figuring out that, and I'm understanding that in order to make those major gains, you have to make incremental decisions to get you there. You have to start small and scale, right? I was talking to my friend Karsten about running, and we're running a half marathon in St. George this weekend. And we were just talking about like afterwards, this is going to be his first half marathon. And he was just telling me, he's like, I'm so excited because like as soon as I'm done, oh man, he's like, I'll be able to just enjoy my runs again and just take it easy. And I can guarantee if he keeps doing that, he's gonna be able to be running marathons in 6 months. But it's because he's consistent and he makes little progress every single day. And running, I always give running examples. So let me find another one here for a second. Let's say you want to read more. Okay, what does that look like? What are you doing right now? Are you reading 10 pages a day and you want to read a little bit more? Okay, read one more page and don't push it. or like go to the point to where it starts to feel like you're having conflict. Because if you start pushing past that and you like, then it becomes a chore, right? And then you stop enjoying it. But it's the fact that you stick with it and you get comfortable adding just a little bit more every single day, then boom, you'll start scaling and you'll start getting better. And it's there's actually these things at the gym. They're like these small little weight plates. I think they're like half a kilogram, but major power lifters and weightlifters, they will use these small little incremental gains to maximize their PRs. So they might have like 315 pounds on the bar and then add half a kilogram to each side. That might not seem like a lot, but to them that's incremental gains to get them to like the next spot, right? So that total of 1 kilogram will eventually get them to where they want to be. So it's just a little bit of progress. And I would say to kind of harp on that, I just pulled out like a few points to focus on as you do track your progress. One is figure out your why. Like don't go after a goal if you don't have a why. That's what I would say. You need to establish tangible goals, so ones that you can measure, like I said, because that which can be measured can be improved. You need to create a game plan, so figure out what you're going to do to get there. Practice reflection. One thing I do every day is journal, and I actually started doing this other thing based on something I heard from just another podcast, but an end of day report. So this takes me 5 minutes, but what I'll do is outline maybe 5 things that went well that day, and then 5 things I wish I could have done a little bit better. So that's aside from my journal. And then in my journal, I'll talk about, further like more detailed topics about my day or things I'm learning. But that's what I would say is you need to reflect on it. And one thing that I'm trying to work on that I need to be better at is celebrating those small victories as you go. So I shaved off 3 seconds of my average mile time for 7 minutes, right? Or 7 miles. I should be celebrating that. I should be like, hey, nice work. But, your goal's a sub 3. You have a tangible goal. You have a game plan to get there. So you've reflected, you've celebrated. Now let's get back to work. That's it. The fourth point is saying no a lot. And I was talking to my wife, Allie, about this at dinner tonight. And she brought up a good point. She's like, it's kind of interesting. Like every time you hear people who are successful, they're always saying yes to things, right? And to her point, yeah, that is true to an extent. I think you have to be careful with this because if you have certain goals and you know what you want to achieve, then it should be pretty clear of what steps that you need to take to get there, right? And sometimes you might have to say no to what Alex Hormozy calls the woman in the red dress. And he refers to the Matrix. There's this scene where Neo and Morpheus are walking down the street in New York. Everything's kind of black and gray, green. If you've seen the Matrix, you know what I'm talking about. And he's walking down the street and he's explaining this lesson to Neo where he's talking about, you need to be focused all the time. You need to be doing these things. And he's teaching them this lesson. And then Neo kind of fades out because this beautiful woman in a red dress walks right by him and it catches his attention. And Neo looks at the woman and then Morpheus keeps walking with him and says, Neo, were you listening to me or were you looking at the woman in the red dress? And he said, and then Morpheus goes, look again, turns around and it's Agent Smith with a gun pointing at his head. And then he pauses the simulation, Morpheus does, and he says, if you want to be all in, you have to be all in. So I'm basically saying, like, if you have a goal, you have to be there, right? Or no, that's not the quote. My bad. It's if you're not one of us, you're one of them. That's what it was. But basically, same concept, right? If you're not all in, good luck. But saying no a lot, you're gonna have to say no to some things that might look valuable. So I was talking to Ali at the same conversation about this quote, but I started a new role in a sales job where I've had to learn a lot recently. I've had to ask a lot of questions, watch a lot of calls, and just shadow other reps who have been doing it longer. But because of that, like some of my friends have come up to me and they're like, hey, do you want to go to lunch? And I know that if I go to lunch, I'm going to be more stressed that night because I'm going to have to study more. I have to stay up later. I'll have to put in more hours at work. And for me and my goal and my timeline, I'd be behind. And so I'd have to say no to some of those lunches that seem really fun at the time. Could be beneficial just to go and hang out with some friends. But at the time being, it didn't align with my goals. And I had to say no. And that's fair. Like, you just have to understand what's important to you. And you have to understand what you have to say no to if you want to achieve your goals. And that could be fitness. That could be like, I don't know, your professional goals, your family goals, anything like that. Health is a good one. I get made fun of all the time. Every time we go out to dinner with friends or family or anything, we'll go to a pizza restaurant and I'm the guy that gets a salad. Everyone's like, oh, Brett again with the salad. It's like, yes, but I'm saying no to the pizza because I know what my goals are and I know it works well for me. So there you go. You're going to have to say no a lot. Point number 5 is you need to learn from your mistakes. But to follow up with that, when you do learn from them, pick yourself up and move on. So acknowledge your mistakes, of course. Learn from them. Mistakes are some of the biggest and best teachers that we are going to face in life, right? Anytime you make a mistake, it doesn't feel good. You never feel good when you make a mistake. The point is you have to learn from it. And if you don't learn from it, then you're an idiot. Calling it as you are. But I've heard intelligence is learning, like the speed of being able to learn from a decision maker or a lesson learned. So if you make a mistake and you mess up and you recognize that, but you don't change, then you're not intelligent. But if you make a mistake, you recognize it, you document it, and you realize, okay, maybe I was in the wrong here, and you change, you're a little bit more intelligent than most people. But if someone points out a mistake you made, acknowledge it immediately and show that, like, take extreme ownership. I talk about Jocko all the time. Jocko's biggest thing is extreme ownership. It's all on you. And that means you're going to have to check your ego at the door. You're going to have to be comfortable being wrong sometimes, and you're going to have to be comfortable being humble. And that's okay. No one in life is perfect, and you're not subject to that either. You're not perfect. I'm not perfect. No one is. So once you learn from your mistakes, move on and then apply the lessons learned. Like, one thing that I always go to is when I first got my very first like BDR role. And if you don't know what that is, a BDR role is it's basically like a professional meeting setter, right? And one of the things that they do is just like spray and pray in terms of like reaching out to people all the time. And this was a while back that I was doing this, but my very first day on the job, like I pretty much just asked everyone questions. And one guy, he was the best on the team. He's like, you just got to spray and pray, meaning just reach out to as many people as you can, as much as you can, and go crazy, right? Pretty much spamming people. And I tried that for like 2 weeks. And I realized it was terrible. And I learned that I was making a mistake because there was not anything that was like beneficial for the people. And you're not going to want to meet with someone if it's just like a terrible invite, right? So I learned that lesson real quick and I applied it, and I don't do that anymore. And so now it's like lesson learned, right? The other thing I would say about like learning from your mistakes is you need to reframe how you look at them. So don't look at them as mistakes, look at them as lessons. And David Goggins has this quote about failure that I love. He says he doesn't look at failure as failure. He looks at it as attempt number 1, attempt number 2, attempt number 3. So I would say reframe how you look at your like mistakes as that same point. I'm not saying it's a failure, but what I am saying is like, if you can reframe how you look at your mistakes and look at them as lessons, then boom, you're good. You should celebrate that and be like, all right, I learned a pretty hard lesson here. At least I learned it. It might have been a tough lesson to learn, but hey, I'm not going to make that mistake again. So that's a benefit. And that's all. So those are just a couple tips that I think are important when you consider learning from your mistakes and like how to, right? It's important to always try and improve and making mistakes. It sucks. It's never fun, but it is the best teacher in my opinion. So keep that in mind. And then the last one that I want to talk about is just waste no time measuring yourself against other people. I can't tell you how many times I've said it on this podcast, but comparison is the thief of joy. If you start comparing yourself to other people, you're going to start realizing you don't have everything that you want, right? So a couple points on that. One, I was going to actually record a podcast episode on this, but a couple points on it. The first being you need to start showing more gratitude. When you start measuring yourself against other people, then you could be comparing yourself to some guy that has a Lamborghini when you're driving a Honda Accord and say, I'm never going to get there. Dang it, I'm never going to get there. When in reality, you should say, I have a Honda Accord. I'm the luckiest dude in the world, because there's people who can't even afford that. There's people who can't afford a bike. There's people who just have to walk around all the time. So you having a Honda Accord puts you in maybe the top 1% of the world. I don't know. But just start practicing some gratitude. And one thing, going back to LinkedIn, that people say all the time is just like have a gratitude journal. And I trash LinkedIn a lot, but that actually is something that I think is beneficial, is writing down at least 3 things a day that you are grateful for. And I talk about health and fitness a lot on this podcast. That's one thing I'm very grateful for. And so usually I'll write something about that. And it could just be like, I was lucky enough to go to the gym today. And I told this story way back, I think in my marathon recap, but I was on a run one morning and I got to this point to where I was starting to feel kind of sad for myself. I think it was around mile 5 or 6. Yeah, you kind of start telling yourself these stories when you get to certain points in your run. But it was mile 5 or 6, and I started beating myself up. I'm like, this sucks. I don't know how much further I can go. I think I just kind of want to crash. Like, maybe I'll turn around and call it early. And as I'm telling myself this story, I run into this little tunnel. And beyond the tunnel is a soccer field. So there's all these families playing soccer and a bunch of teams. It's like a beautiful Saturday morning. And so I'm beating myself up and I'm running through this tunnel. And at the end of the tunnel, I see this little kid. He's probably 6 years old, 7 years old, little guy. And he's got stilts, like crutches that he's leaning on. And his legs are bent, almost like it was like I don't know. It's hard to explain, but his legs were bent. He couldn't. He obviously had a disability, and he just looked at me as I ran past him, and I just knew exactly what he was thinking. Is I wish I could run. And so, like, little things like that always stick out to me, and I've never forgot that kid. So anytime I'm on like a run and I'm feeling bad for myself, I always remember him. Don't know his name, but I always think about that kid. And same thing is like, if he's comparing himself to me, then that makes me feel bad, right? Because like he obviously has a disability and he's struggling himself. And the important thing I'm trying to harp on here is gratitude. You can find things to be grateful for no matter what circumstance you're in. Your health, your family, your friends. We live in such a great time to where we have information just available to us all the time. So just start looking for little things to be grateful for. And then the second thing I want to talk about with like measuring yourself against other people is it's just not helpful. Like if you really want to improve in life, comparing yourself to the guy that's got a Lamborghini is not going to do anything. If you want to improve, say that guy's got a Lamborghini and wonder what he had to do to get there. What do I have to change about myself to ultimately get to that point, right? Or even better, it's like if you want to take a different example, we'll take monetary value out of there. I talk a lot about like training and things like that. If you're a new lifter at the gym and you go to the gym once and you see a dude who's benching 315. Actually, here, I'll take a step back because this just happened to me and I feel like a clown. So I started a new job, like I mentioned, and my new boss he's a beast. He's a monster in terms of like muscle mass, right? He's been lifting. I asked him he couldn't even give me a time frame, right? So he's been lifting for a really long time. And I've been sick, right? And I used to be able to bench, a pretty good amount. I can't remember a number, but I deadlift 405, right? So I was a strong dude. I used to weigh 215, stacked. And I lost it all when I got sick. And so since that point, I've been building back up and haven't really been myself. So I'm sitting at my desk last Friday, and I think I might have told this on the podcast last episode, but I'm sitting at my desk last Friday, and I think it was kind of sad. I don't know. It was like the middle of the afternoon. I think he could tell I looked a little depressed. But he comes over to me and he's like, "Dude, what's going on? You okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm all right." And he goes, "Do we need to go hit a bench session?" So I'm like, "Yeah, of course. Let's go." So we go downstairs to like the work gym, and and so I put on like 135, right? And I'm doing some reps. And I'm like, "Okay, what do you want, Garrett?" And he goes, "Let's go 225. I want to see how many times I could do it." And he goes, "I think I'm going to shoot for 20. And so I'm just like this little kid. I just threw on 135 and he's like, "Let's put on 225. I'm going to go for 20 reps." So I'm sitting there and in my head, I could be like, this guy probably thinks I'm a weak dude. And I could start comparing myself to him and be like, why am I not like him? He's way older than me. This dude's joints must be really fragile. I don't know. Shout out to Garrett. Anyways, I could be comparing myself to him, right? But he didn't. He did 225 for 20 reps. Is freaking insane. NFL Combine numbers, baby. And I'm sitting there and I'm just like, there's no point in comparing myself to him because he's been doing it for so much longer. He's been consistent. Like he has a program, and I know that I'm still coming back from building up to where I used to be. And so there's no point in comparison, like, because if I compare myself to him, then that's not going to do me anything. If I want to get better, maybe I ask him, okay, well, what do you do to, like, how'd you get to this point? What steps did you take? What's your routine look like? What's your diet look like? You have any tips for someone like me? The point of the story is you should focus on yourself and set realistic and achievable goals, because once you hit an achievable goal, that becomes a stack of evidence that you can rely on and look back at and say, hey, I set these steps in place. I know I can do it. And then your confidence boosts. So it's always you versus you, right? But you have to set achievable goals that you can reach so that evidence compiles and you know who you are. The best way to find out who you are is to have that evidence. I listened to this podcast with Chris Williamson and this other guy. His name's Steven. I don't know his last name. But they brought up a good point. They're like, self-confidence comes from keeping commitments to yourself. And people always forget about that. And they try and keep these huge, high commitments, right? It's like, I'm going to work out 10 days a week, or 10 days a week. Wow. I'm going to work out 10 times a week. Sure. You could say that. And they shoot for that goal and it doesn't happen. And then they're like, I'm such a piece of crap. I didn't work out 10 times a week. But in reality, it's like a goal you could set for yourself is, I want to be in bed by 10 p.m. And a way to achieve that is just be in bed by 10 p.m. and be a person that goes to bed at 10 p.m. and you'll have that evidence that you are who you say you are. And you'll find out who you are pretty quickly. And that's what I would say is, like, comparison is the thief of joy, right? And once you start comparing yourself to other people, your self-confidence will start to diminish. There's no doubt in that, because I've done that and it's true. If you start comparing yourself to others, you'll realize you don't have what you think you want. When in reality, if you just focus on what you have, be grateful for that, and start making that small little incremental progress every single day to become a little bit better, you're gonna become who you think you are and who you never thought you could become. It's making that little progress every day, measuring it, saying no to people, learning from your mistakes, limiting those interruptions, waking up early, building that undeniable stack of evidence that you are who you say you are, and eventually you'll become that person. And so tying it all into it, like there's not necessarily an exact thing that you should be doing every single day, right? There's not a set of tasks that you need to get done. You don't have to be up by 4:30 in the morning. You need to do what's best for you, what's best for your family, what's best for your goals. And in order to achieve those goals, you might have to set some boundaries up, say no a lot. But the biggest point I want to say here is everyone's at different steps in life. Everyone's at different parts where they may be way ahead of you. It may be like my boss who's benching 225 for 20 reps. I'm not there. That's fine. I can get there. I just have to understand what I want and what I have to do to get there. And so that's the point, is like, all I would say is take some time to evaluate what your goals are and what you want, and then be confident that you can get there if you take the steps in place and you focus on that. You measure it, you track it, and you're consistent. If I talk about consistency one more time on this podcast, I swear someone's going to kill me, but I will talk about it until I die because I know the power of it. And I know how important it is to be consistent in everything that you do. Your profession, your health goals, your relationship goals, anything. Whatever that is, be consistent and don't stop. Because that's where you start to fall off. And that's where that stack of evidence starts to lose its meaning. So don't lose that meaning. Just keep getting after it. That's it. So thanks everyone for tuning into this episode. Appreciate you listening. If you have any topics you want me to cover, always send me a DM. And until that point, keep getting after it, everyone.